Where did the day go? It's after dark. It's legal AF time. Yes, it is. Pardons. Pardon me. Pardon, pardon, pardon. Pardons are on everybody's mind and lips. Democrats are wringing their hands over the Joe Biden pardon. I don't think he went far enough. And neither does my partner, Ben Meiselas. I want more pardons, not less pardons. And we cover it. One place only, twice a week. Legal AF, the podcast, here on the MeidasTouch Network. Take a listen.
You know, you think about the people who Donald Trump pardoned. Charles Kushner, a member of his family, convicted of tax evasion, witness retaliation, making false statements. Roger Stone, Paul Manafort, former Trump campaign chair, guilty of tax fraud, bank fraud, conspiracy against the U.S. Flynn, Bannon, former White House advisor, defrauding donors through the We Build the Wall scam. Elliot Brody, Republican fundraiser, guilty of acting as an unregistered foreign agent. Kenneth Kurson, friend of Kushner, charged with cyber stalking. Duncan Hunter, former congressman, Republican, misusing campaign funds. Rick Renzi, Republican congressman, convicted of extortion and bribery. Lil Wayne and Kodak Black, rappers convicted on weapons charges. They publicly came out supporting Trump and then got the pardon. Albert Pirro, Judge Jeanine Pirro's wife. I could go on and on and on here, you know, with all of these people.
Ed DeBartolo, San Francisco 49ers.
Joe Arpaio, the Arizona sheriff, Republican, who just did the most horrific thing to people in there. So you have all of that. But when it comes to Trump, the way it's covered is, look, this guy's a corrupt guy. This is Trump, corrupt, authoritarian dictator. It's all good. And then when it comes to President Biden, it's purity, 100%. And if Donald Trump then appoints Kash Patel to the FBI, who says he's going to spend his time attacking Hunter, how dare you, President Biden, in a nuanced way, change your position and now say, well, circumstances changed. You're not bringing in normal people. I'm going to now have to protect my son because you're threatening to almost kill him. Like, you're threatening to attack him. You're saying the most horrific things. And we all know that the prosecution against Hunter was absolutely politicized. So there's no context. There's no context of Trump's pardons. There's no context on the fact. I just listed who was pardoned. You go watch the MeidasTouch videos where I detail all of the sweetheart deals that Ivanka and Jared got while they were working for the White House, unelected bureaucrats who, with Jared, couldn't get through a security clearance, and he's cutting deals for billions of dollars, not a few $1,000 or $100,000. You know, there's a broad, when it comes to like Hunter Biden, I do a broader hot take on Hunter when it comes to why he was even sitting on the board in Burisma. Hunter sat on boards before. He was appointed, he went to Yale Law School. He was a partner at a top law firm. He was appointed to be on the Amtrak board and then the UN Food Aid Board by George W. Bush. He had a history of sitting on boards. He was asked to sit on the Burisma board after Biden was the vice president and before Biden ever decided to run. Hunter needed a job, and that was the type of job that he did before when he was on the board of, when he sat on the board of Burisma. And the reason he was on that board is part of the fact that Burisma's board used to be controlled by Russian oligarchs, and the pro-democracy former leader of Poland wanted someone who would be a pro-democracy voice on the board of a company that used to be run by Russian oligarchs to be a check against it, which is why Hunter did. There's a whole story that I could probably spend episodes talking about, but Hunter wasn't even charged with that. He was charged with paying his taxes late, which is normally a civil penalty, and he was charged with going to buy a gun or buying a gun and he checked the box that he wasn't under the influence
and he
of
owned
alcohol.
it for 12 days.
And the evidence for it came from Hunter's autobiography, right, where Hunter explained what it was like to be in recovery. He explained a low point of his life when he was suicidal and he was thinking about buying guns, and he was paranoid. And it was the lowest point of his life in a redemption book written many years later. That's what they used to ultimately prosecute him with. So look, you and I did the Hunter chat. We can. I don't want to go and necessarily repeat it. I want to give your perspective. From my perspective, Hunter, the pardon's fine, but that's the easy answer. Of course, he should pardon us. It's not even a hard question for me. It's not a difficult question. The difficult question for me is, why do we get trapped, the collective we, in Republican frameworks versus talking about what Donald Trump's been saying, which is he's always going to pardon the insurrectionist. You know, he's been a massive supporter of insurrectionists. Trump's appointed all of these billionaires to be on his cabinet, people right now who are in positions where their businesses will be directly impacted, where he's not filling out ethics forms. But that gets, if it's written about at all, it's like buried in page 16 in the corner, if at all. It's not being talked about on networks. And don't get me wrong, you know, it's like, Ben, there's some people, that list. Lawrence O'Donnell talks about it, Chris Hayes, Rachel Maddow. I can count on 3 fingers the people who actually bring this stuff up. And by the way, there are still good reporters at CNN. There are good reporters at Washington Post. There are good reporters at the New York Times who want to cover this stuff, who do great original reporting. So you're right. I shouldn't do this broad brush and be like, all the media, all the media, all the media. But overwhelmingly, the oligarchical controlled media is, you can't leave this week and go, oh my God, they just spent the whole week on freaking Hunter. That's all they talked about. And then we're like, well, and then this is what even Democrats like. They're like, this could have been the week where we were talking about this, this, and this. But now, because what you did, President Biden, they're talking about Hunter. No, it's what you're letting the media craft as the narrative, and what you've let the media become, an oligarchical agent of Donald Trump. You can push back. You can reframe it. You can tell people to watch networks like this and other independent media, but you can be like, look, child sex trafficking party over there. Why don't you hold big signs and walk around Capitol Hill and say they're the party of child sex trafficking? Why are you normalizing these people as normal colleagues after they vote to support child sex trafficking allegations? Like, this is a fight. And MAGA Republicans are out with knives and guns in this fight. And it seems that, you know, Democrats and others are out with, I don't know. They're out with the Parmesan cheese for, you know, and they're the waiters out with the Parmesan cheese topping off the MAGA Republicans, you know, appetizers. It's ridiculous.
Are we hungry? We might be hungry during this record. We mentioned food a lot, but I agree with you. Let me not bury my.
What are my food references?
I don't know. I like it, but I'm hungry, so it's okay. I don't want to bury my lead. I want more pardons, not less. It's exactly the right thing at the right moment to use the last remaining superpower for lame duck Joe Biden to protect our constitutional republic against the what will be the abuse of power that we will see on a daily basis and cover here on MeidasTouch Network and on Legal AF, the channel, on a daily basis after Donald Trump gets in. You can't ignore what Donald Trump has said he is going to do and is in the process of doing with destroying the independence of the Department of Justice and the FBI, and act like it doesn't matter, and maybe he won't, and not use the pardon power. I've said this at a hot take. You know, we got to start throwing some elbows here. We got to start playing as, I'm not saying be immoral, I'm not saying be unconstitutional, but we have to start playing rough to protect our democracy. And yes, ideally, in an ideal world, does Joe Biden have to give out blanket pardons to protect Liz Cheney or Adam Schiff or Jack Smith or Letitia James, and the list goes on? All you got to do is just listen to Kash Patel and write down every name. Listen to Trump on the campaign trail and write down every name. Listen to his proxies and lackeys around him and write down every name. Right now, I want the Biden administration, I want some clerk, some law clerk or whatever's working in there to be creating an Excel spreadsheet of every one of these names. And I want a blanket pardon to protect them on the way out. That is what we can do. And I don't want to hear about hand wringing or bemoaning. I'm not making this up. I almost vomited when I read Jeffrey Toobin of the New Yorker write that it sullied and stained the entirety of Joe Biden's record of public service has now been stained with an indelible mark. Because are you effing kidding me? And by the way, I mean, not to be rude, but 3 years ago, Jeffrey Toobin was masturbating. I'm sorry, this is public, during a Zoom call with his New Yorker colleagues and got canned. So I really, but forget that. Let's just talk about Joe Biden. Joe Biden's proper use of the pardon power. And I wanted to go further. And I'm glad to see the New York Times reported yesterday that at least at the mid-level of the Biden administration, they are seriously considering and escalating it up to Joe about blanket pardons. This is his last opportunity. He has until 11:59 on the 20th of January to protect democracy, and he's got to do it. I mean, there's an old, speaking of food, there's an old joke that it reminds me of that Seinfeld used to tell on his stand-up. He said, I understand, the Chinese, when they eat, they like chopsticks, but they've seen the fork since then. We know what Donald Trump is going to do. For us to ignore it in the operation of the remaining days of the Biden administration would be, I think, constitutional malpractice, and they would do it to us. And we have to protect our own. There's no other way to put this. On the last point about this, Ben, you're so right. The incoming administration and the incoming cabinet, whatever's left of it, after it's shredded by the firings, the quittings, the can't get through the Senate confirmation process part, whatever's left of this cabinet, many of them are billionaires and more that are so blinded by their own greed and their own ethical problems that they're not solving. This is the thing the media dropped because it didn't fit neatly into their news cycle. Donald Trump signs agreement to have FBI do background checks. Okay, what about the fact that he hasn't signed the ethics code nor a plan that he's supposed to put in place by law to show how the ethical dilemmas of his cabinet members are going to be solved? Why is that ignored? We already know Donald Trump is not subject to any, unfortunately, as the president, is not subject to any ethics code or to conflicts of interest, criminal or civil. And he is now, the lesson he learned is that, and his Trump organization led by Eric Trump, at least at the front, is they're just going to make as much money as possible. No blind trusts. He's selling perfume days before he enters office. The Trump Times reported that Eric Trump signed, this is the week leading into the election, signed deals with Saudi Arabia and their go-to construction company controlled by the sovereign wealth fund there, meaning the prince. Saudi Arabia, Vietnam, the United Arab Emirates all got signed leading into the election. Now, after the election, I'm not talking about a war room. I'm not talking about a situation room map. I'm talking about where Trump organization is going to do business around the world for people who want to buy a president. And there's two ways to buy this president that we have to focus on. One, cryptocurrency, which Donald Trump has opened up this cryptocurrency platform that you can buy a president through it. We just had a guy who's a young cryptocurrency mogul who's being investigated and prosecuted by the Securities and Exchange Commission, invest $30 million into Trump's organization, immediately putting $20 million into the Trump family's pants, all right, into their pockets, while he's getting ready to move into the White House. Okay, cryptocurrency, the dark money web area of drug dealers and organized crime is now the business that Donald Trump is primarily focused on. Okay, and everybody around him has got a vested interest in cryptocurrency, from his commerce secretary to his Elon Musk to Donald Trump himself. And the second way is Truth Social. You can't make a direct investment in a donation for a campaign, but he doesn't need campaign funds anymore. If you're a foreigner and you want to influence Donald Trump, buy his stock. There's no limitation on foreigners doing that. And they're so blinded by all this, Ben, that the only thing I'm hoping, and I'm watching already, is that they're not able to effectively do their jobs, and we can beat them in the courthouses and in America, in federal courts, every time they screw up. Right now, we're like in a weird little period where we're doing a lot of shadow boxing about the Trump administration. But as soon as he signs those hundreds and thousands of executive orders, not the pardons we can't do a thing about, but the executive orders, we have to be ready as a independent media organization to support it, and public interest groups and attorney generals around the country. We got to be ready, and we are, to get into court on a moment's notice for emergency relief. Welcome back. 4.5 years ago, we created a little thing we call Legal AF. If you don't know why we call it that, now you do. Wednesdays and Saturdays at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, and then wherever you get your podcasts from, audio podcasts from, you can come join us there. I got a new show at the intersection of law and politics called Popok Live. What else? 8 p.m. Eastern Time, right here on this YouTube channel. And then we got a new Legal AF YouTube channel in collaboration with the MeidasTouch Network, and we call it, wait for it, Legal AF. Find it at Legal AF MTN for MeidasTouch Network. Nobody tells me what to say. Nobody tells Ben Meiselas what to say. There's no editorial viewpoint that is shoved down anybody's throat. We just tell it like it is. Calling balls and strikes with our own commentary and unique brand of analysis. Can't find it anywhere else. Find out what 50 million people a month already know. Legal AF is the home of law and politics commentary and analysis like no other. Not blowing smoke or sunshine, never have, never will. And if you know all about Legal AF, thank you for being part of our audience and our build over the last 4.5 years. And if you haven't seen Legal AF, here's my personal invitation from Popok to you to have you join our journey as part of your own and find out what 50 million people a month already know. That Legal AF and the MeidasTouch Network is the home for law and politics commentary and analysis like no other. So until my next reporting, I'm Michael Popok. In collaboration with the MeidasTouch Network, we just launched the Legal AF YouTube channel. Help us build this pro-democracy channel where I'll be curating the top stories at the intersection of law and politics. Go to YouTube now and free subscribe at Legal AF MTN. That's at Legal AF MTN.